Welcome back to Just Scribble for a review of the Papertess B5 Manager. Review, I don't really know if review is exactly the right word, but it's the closest word that I could think of to describe what we're going to talk about. I wanted to give you guys my thoughts on the B5 Manager after using it for the first quarter of 2025. Talk to you guys in a little bit more detail about why this planner didn't really work for me for work, kind of what I wish was different about this planner, the things that I think would have been better in this planner if they had been done differently. So I do have a separate video where I talked about my work planner system and the fact that I'm changing it up. And so I will link that in the cards up above so you guys can check that out. But I didn't want to talk about my thoughts on this planner in detail in that video because it was already kind of a long chatty video, and I thought a more formal sort of review video would be better. So I do have a video on my channel, which I'll link up above, going through the setup of this planner and how I set it up for work and how I intended to use it for work. But this was my work planner, or my intended work planner for 2025, and what I used for the first quarter. And I paired it with one of her notebooks. It's called The Notebook. It is a dot grid Cosmo Airlight notebook that is page numbered with a place at the top for the date. And I paired this with this. This didn't have extra pages in a way for me that would work for dailies. So I did pair these two together. This worked fine for me. I think the biggest issue I had with pairing the two together is that I really wanted this information to be in here where the week was that this related to. So I really wanted these to kind of be merged together just because it's easier to go back and find things after the fact, because I do have to go back and refer to things in my work planner. But this worked fine. It is a dot grid, which is not my preference, which is one of the things we'll talk about in the B5 Manager sort of review as well. I don't really prefer a dot grid. I prefer lined or regular grid, but it worked perfectly fine. I wasn't a huge fan of the date spot at the top because sometimes I would use multiple pages for one day, and sometimes I would put multiple days on a page, and so I would have rather that have just been blank and I would have added the date wherever I wanted to add it, but I just kind of ignored it because it's pretty faint and pretty small. And the page numbering I could take or leave because I didn't really need that in this, but it doesn't hurt to have it. It just didn't really need to have it. But that's the little notebook. The notebook worked fine. It's just a grid kind of TN booklet. But this is the planner, and this is really what we're here to talk about and review. So I did make some notes. This is my Moleskine Expanded that I use for, anything that I need to get out of my head. So I have layout designs in here for inserts that I want to design. I have notes for the shop in here. I have random notes about planner lineups. I have random to-do lists. I have all sorts of stuff in here. It's just a hodgepodge of messy writing. This notebook has terrible paper. If I can get back to the back, everything bleeds through on it. It's really, really pretty bad paper. So everything from a Tombow to a Uniball to a Zig to a Pentel, fountain pens, everything bleeds through. So it's a pretty bad paper. So I generally only write on one side of the paper because everything bleeds through, but it doesn't really bother me. It's just been kind of a fun notebook to have for random notes and thoughts and all the things. At the end of the day, it will get trashed. I won't keep it, but I thought it was just a fun use, and so I've kind of been having fun with it. But in here, I did make notes about the B5 Manager and my work planner and kind of what I needed. And I have all of these kind of notes in here, this whole sort of section here. All of this is all about my work planner. So it is notes about this planner, notes about other planners that I tried, notes about planners I thought I would try, notes about what I think I need in my work planner routine, all of that kind of stuff. These notes are how I went from this to the new setup that I'm using, and I'm going to refer to these notes as we go through this kind of review because these are the notes that I have on my thoughts on this planner. So I kind of have 2 pages of notes on this planner, so I'm going to kind of be flipping back and forth, and hopefully this will still be a concise, well thought out video. Let's start first with the size. I love a B5 size. I have been a big fan of B5 size notebooks. They're basically composition size notebooks forever. I've always loved a composition size notebook, so I really liked the size of this planner. So I was really excited when she offered this planner, and it is Cosmo Air Light paper, which is now called B7 paper because they have kind of rebranded their paper and changed the name. And I really like that paper as well. It holds up to a lot of things. It's a little bit thicker than Tomoe River paper, so you have less ghosting and shadowing, which particularly in a work planner is nice. And so I really like the paper. So two positives for me were the size and the paper. I was also really intrigued by the layout in this planner because at the front, let me see. I can't show you everything in here because it's got work stuff in it, but it did have a yearly overview and then a page over here, which I covered up with a department training that I needed. You had a sort of Calendex, she called it an overview, but a sort of Calendex page that I was using for continued education. And then you had some project pages. And then you go into the monthlies, which had a monthly on 2 pages, and then a monthly dashboard, and then your weeklies. And I do have a video on this, the setup, and then also my unboxing. And then at the back, you had 53 grid pages at the back. So starting at the front, I guess, would be the best place to start. The front cover is fine. I mean, it's just plain end papers, and then your page that kind of sticks to the end papers just said my manager's notebook. I do have a post-it note there I printed my key on, so that was fine. The yearly overview over here was fine as well. Really clean. I used it to mark company holidays and my kiddo's school holiday just so I had a really quick, easy reference. And then the page over here was just a dot grid page, and I covered it with this printable that I made to keep track of trainings that my staff do in our department, and so that worked fine as well. This overview, I didn't have a whole lot of use for this overview, so I was using it to track my continued education. I kind of fell off of that because I would forget to go back and check it and to update it. But overall, I didn't have any problem with this page whatsoever. I didn't have a whole lot of uses for this page. So it just had your months, 6 months on each page, and then it had the date down the side that wasn't specific to that month. It was just 1 through 31 on both sides so that you could use that to mark. So it truly was more of a perpetual calendar because you could put any information in this. It didn't matter what day of the week was the 1st versus the 5th, etc. So this would have been actually a good place to future plan or to put recurring things that you might need and use this as a true perpetual calendar. And then the next page was the project planner. This is the spot where I dislike this a little bit. I love a project planner. I have one in Plans by Just Scribble. Land 222 has one. Papertess has them. A lot of planners have this sort of quarterly project planner in their planner layout, and I really like it. It provides you kind of a mini monthly on one page, well, 3 months on a page, and then a page on the opposite side that you can do whatever you want with. And for work, I find these really helpful for a specific project that I work on. What I didn't like about this is that it wasn't separated by month. This is a problem with some other planners that have this as well. In my planner, each month is separated. So it's very easy to see what's July versus what's August versus what's September. In the Papertess, they were all kind of bundled together. And another shop made this change this year as well, where the July goes straight into the August, goes straight into the September. And so seeing where the month began and ended was really hard and made it hard to use this functionally. So I actually added color and I gave each month a color so I could mark the month with that color. And so I could see July from August from September. But even still, it was kind of one giant mesh of page, and I didn't really like that. Sometimes when I was writing in it, I would have to think whether this was a July day or an August day, even with my color coding. So one of the things that I really didn't like about this planner was the way this was designed. I understand why some shops have done this because they think it kind of maximizes the space, but I think you could actually make 3 distinct months and use up some of this excess space up the top, and you could have had them divided up and they wouldn't be meshed together, and I think they would be more usable. So I found a workaround in the color coding that I did, And then I matched that or mirrored that over here with making monthly boxes so I could make notes about the projects for that month or the steps in the project for that month. But this was kind of my first, I didn't really like this in this planner. And for me, this spread, or the intent behind the spread, what I was using this spread for, is actually really important. It's something that I refer back to when I'm planning for the next year. As I go back to my project planner schedule. And so this was something that was really functional for me, that I really needed in this planner. And I was really struggling with it because it was really just kind of hard to see where I was at in the planner. I also, like I said, I don't like dot grid, and this is a dot grid over here. I would have preferred if this was grid. I find it easier to write in a straight line if it's grid. I just would have preferred it. I did like what I did to divide it up because I thought it looked nice and it made it a little bit easier to kind of see the lines that I was going to be writing on. But for me, the dot grid was not my happy place. I'm just not a dot grid kind of girl. After that, you have a 2-page dot grid page. It doesn't really have any purpose. I think you could use this for your word of the year or a vision board or for your goals. I just didn't actually end up using this page. I don't have anything wrong with this page. It's just I didn't have an intent for it and I never actually did anything with it. And then after that, you go into your monthlies. And like I said, you have your monthly and then you have your dashboard, and then you go straight into the weeks of that month. I love that. I love a bundled planner. So the fact that this was bundled and the months and the dashboard and the weeks were all together was awesome. It's one of the reasons that I decided that I wanted to try this planner for work, because even though I do look back at previous months and I also write in future months for future planning, like when things get scheduled, I write directly into the monthly. Even though I'm sometimes in those others, this is where I'm spending all of my time in that month. I'm in the monthly, I'm in my dashboard, I'm in my weeklies. And so this is where I live in the month in a personal planner or in a work planner, which is why my planners are bundled as well. It's just a much more efficient planner when you don't have to flip up here to get to your monthlies and then flip here to get to your weeklies and then flip back here to get to something else. It's just much more efficient to be all in one. So I really enjoyed that it was bundled. However, I didn't really love some of the layout features in those pages. So we'll start with the monthly. This is what my January monthly looked like at the end of the day, but I'm going to flip to November just because it's blank, so it's a little bit easier to see. But I felt like there was a lot of wasted space in this monthly, and it might just be partly how I plan in a monthly and what I use my monthlies for. But one thing that I had a lot of trouble with was the size of the sidebar. So this sidebar was really, really, really big. And although that gives you a lot of space to write lists of things you want to get done for the month, that's not really where I keep my to-do lists and go back to for my to-do lists. A lot of times on a monthly, I will keep some high-level things when I'm future planning. So when I think of something, I'll write it in the monthly so I don't forget when I get to that month. But I don't need this much space to do that. And then because of the way that was done and the way this was set so largely, your Monday was here, and so you had Monday and Tuesday here, and then the rest of your week over here. And in all of the planners that I have and that I use, Monday sits here, Tuesday, Wednesday. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday are always here. And then Thursday through the rest of the week is over here. And so my brain naturally goes here for Monday and here for Wednesday. And so it took a lot of brain power to kind of shift my thinking. I'll naturally go here thinking this was Wednesday. So when I was filling out my monthly, I kind of had to put a little bit of extra thought into it, which thinking isn't bad. Obviously, thinking is good. But I'm busy at work, and the last thing I need to do is write something on the wrong day because I expect this to be Wednesday, if that makes sense. And the days could have been a lot bigger if all this other space wasn't used for just extra writing space. So you had this really big sidebar, and then you had this really big section at the bottom. And these were divided in kind of 2 sections. And then there was a section down here, space for the month, where you had 6 weeks, but then still a space down here. So you had all these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, at a minimum 6 extra lines here, where you could have made each day of the week 1 line longer and still had space for 6 weeks. And so you could have made these boxes longer. And then with the sidebar this wide, you could have made them wider as well. So I think you could have made the real estate of each monthly box so much bigger, which in a planner this size would have been amazing. And so I think that there was just a lot of wasted space. You ended up only working in this one little spot, and all of this was for extra superfluous stuff that you didn't necessarily need, especially in a planner this big that had some other features in it. So one of my first like big negatives besides the project planner was the monthly, because I felt like it had wasted space. One thing I did love about the monthly is that it was lined. So as much as I love a grid, I really like a lined monthly. I find it's really easy to write your plans in. So I really enjoy having that lined monthly. So I really did actually like that. When you turn the page from there, and I'll show you January, I think I can show you January. Yeah. So when you turn the page from your monthly, you go to your dashboard. So your dashboard has monthly goals here, a dot grid here, a circle to track your progress there, a monthly list there, habits/tasks there, and then boxes across for every day of the month divided into weeks, and then a progress chart over here. So you had all of these sort of divided spots. This is really where I realized this planner for me is too much planner and not enough planner. And this is the too much planner spot. If I have this dashboard where I can write out my tasks for the month, I don't need all this space on my monthly to write out tasks for the month. If I have this space here for my monthly goals, I don't also need this space here that I could use for monthly goals. This monthly list here, this 1 through 30 list here in the case of November, is repetitive of the monthly here. And then over here you have this progress place to kind of chart your progress, and then this other sort of progress place up here, and then you have your checkboxes here. It's just too much. A lot of stuff that's here could go here, or what goes here could go here. And I don't need them in both places, and figuring out where to put them got really complicated because I don't want to have to be flipping from my week back to here and then back to here to make sure that I've captured everything. I just want it a little bit simpler. It's just too much. For me, this monthly list didn't have any use. I was trying to figure out a use for it. I couldn't figure out what I wanted to do with it. And so I literally would just write down some key dates and like birthdays for people in my office, but I would never look at it because this is where I look at my monthly schedule for the month and birthdays and holidays and things like that. So I never used it. This habits/task section, although sounds good in theory, is actually not enough for what I do in the month. This might have been sufficient for a week, but it was not sufficient for a month. And so I didn't have enough space here to put everything. And so because of that, I didn't want to use it because it would fill up. And where am I going to put the rest of the stuff? Now I have it somewhere else and everything's not in one place. So that was a limitation in that it had a space here, but I couldn't really use it because it wasn't enough space. If this was being used for like your personal planner or your health and wellness, this might be great for habits and tasks. But for a work planner, it wasn't enough space. This dot grid section up here was just a lot of wasted space. I don't really know what the purpose of this up here was. And for me, this little chart, the little circle chart, added no value either. And so because I didn't think I needed goals here, I didn't have any purpose for this, and I didn't need this, I could have shifted all this up and then I would have had more place for tasks. That may not have been enough still, but it would have gotten me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, at least 12 more tasks. So I would have had a whole bunch more task space if everything was kind of shifted up. This progress spot over here, also for me, a wasted space. The way that my projects work and the way that my tasks work, I don't track them this way and I don't have any need to track them this way. And so this again was wasted space. So I had to kind of come up with a different use for it. And then although I liked the concept of this sort of Gantt chart system where I would mark when I got these things done, it was really hard to look all the way across to find the place when I actually marked it done. So I tried filling it out and putting a dot where I thought it should be done or like when this was due, like this task was due. But then again, I was having to get a card or a ruler or something to draw across. And then it was kind of hard to see the weeks, like which week was which. And there's a lot of wasted space because if the week started on Saturday, like at this instance, there was just slashes, and these 5 boxes have absolutely no purpose. And so I have these 5 boxes here, these 5 columns that are going to be blank for the entire month. So wasting the space. And so as much as I tried, let me go back to January. As much as I tried, it just didn't really work. So this spread for me, for what I was going to use it for, and actually I don't know, I think I would have some of the same problems if I was using this for my personal planner, was too much spread and not enough spread at the same time. I think that there was, again, a lot of wasted real estate that could have been used functionally, and some of the function where it told me what I was supposed to be doing doesn't work for how I plan. And so I think it needed to give me a little bit of direction, but not tell me quite so much what to do. I hope that makes sense. When you flipped from the dashboard, you go into your weeklies and you just have weeklies. So all the weeks of that month. Things that I liked about the weekly are that it's a Monday start and that the Saturday and Sunday are stacked because I didn't need those for work. Things that I was kind of indifferent about was the large size of the sidebar and how it was divided up. Initially, I was using these as sort of sections or headers for things that I needed to do to group my tasks by sort of areas of focus. But then sometimes that area of focus had too many things and sometimes it had too few things, and that didn't really work all that well. And I actually ended up doing some stickers on some of the weeks. I actually did a plan with me for this particular week with you guys, and this isn't what it looked like. I added the boxes later because the way I had it set up just wasn't going to work for that week. And so I used box stickers and that actually worked better. But this was kind of enough space and not enough space at the same time. So the sidebar I'm kind of indifferent on. I did like that there was a sort of a blank spot up above for writing, you know, like someone's birthday or anniversary or something like that. I don't like the 24-hour clock or the military clock. It doesn't work very well for me for work. And because this was a work planner, I didn't need it to go so far down. And I know most planners do. But because this was intended to be a sort of teacher planner, or that was kind of the basis for how she designed it, I would have thought that maybe you would have spots above and below, but really it would give you like a school day or a work day hours section, and then everything else would be blank. And if you needed to add the time, you could go back and add the time. So I don't really like the military time. I made it work. I don't really like that it went all the way down to 2 a.m., but I just whited that out and I made this like a list section. But the biggest thing with the weekly that I didn't like is that there's no half-hour increments. A lot of my meetings are scheduled on the half hour, and it made it really hard to write them in properly in here and really see where I needed to be during the day. So I really do wish that there had been half-hour increments built in. And because this was sort of intended to be a work planner or teacher planner, that's how the concept started, you could have had half-hour increments and done your timeline that way and left it spread this much and not gone from 6 a.m. to 2 a.m. And then someone that didn't need it like that could put a different timeline on it. But you could have done 6, 6:30, 7, 7:30, etc., or 7, whatever time you wanted to start with. And so I think that the timeline could have been better. And then I liked the fact that there were dots on the weekends instead of a timeline because I use these for to-do lists. And so I really liked that. So the next thing is that I didn't like was that in the B5 Manager, you went from week to week and there was no blank spread in between. In the A5 Slim version of this, which was in Tomover paper, she had your week and then a blank dot grid page or dot grid spread. Then the next week, a dot grid spread, etc. And so you had a blank grid spread between each week. Instead, in this planner, they're in the back. So you have 53 dot grid pages, actually 54. Yeah, 54. So put those in between each week, and I think it would have been a much better design because again, then you're not flipping back and forth so much. In this planner, if you're using it as a work planner or a teacher planner or something, I feel like you need these pages between your weeks so that you can use it for notes or little dailies or to-do lists, etc. And so I think that it would have been better if these had been interspersed throughout between each of the weeks instead of in the back. So those are kind of my thoughts on this planner. I think it's a beautiful planner, don't get me wrong, but for me, it didn't work as a work planner, but there was also just a lot of space that I thought the real estate could have been maximized more. And although I think aesthetically it's beautiful, its purpose first and foremost is to be functional. And I think it could have been more functional and been more planner for you, but also less planner at the same time. So I'm going to double check my notes and make sure I'm not missing anything. All right, so I told you guys I liked the size because it's a fun size. I get to use my covers, which is awesome. I told you guys I liked the paper. We talked about the project planner. We talked about all the different spreads. Oh, okay. So one of the notes that I did make to myself was about this monthly dashboard. One other note that I had made about the dashboard is that I actually think this sort of Gantt chart stuff could have been on one page, and then your to-do lists could have been on the other page. Then it would be easier to see because you wouldn't be kind of going over the spine and this big gap here. And so I think you could have found a way to do the Gantt chart. It might have had to go this way, like across the page, like a horizontal page instead of a vertical page. But that was one of the other notes that I wrote. Like I said, I think this is a beautiful planner. I think that planners that are too basic without any direction, that don't tell you how to use them, are great because you can really make them your own. But it can also be overwhelming and it can cause paper paralysis for a lot of people. And planners that are too detailed and too specific can be too limited because it's really hard to make it your own and make that predefined setup work for you and your life or your role. And so this is an example of a planner that for me is too detailed and too specific. It has a lot of beautiful features in it that I think are lovely, and I think if I had the time to just play and make a pretty spread, this could be gorgeous and it would look really lovely filled out and marked all pretty. But work isn't like that. I don't have time to sit down and do that. I need the functionality of it to be maximized as much as possible, and I don't like wasting the space that a lot of the features of this planner waste for me because they just don't work for me, or I find them sort of duplicative of a different spread in the planner. So that is my review. Like I said, I think this is a beautiful planner, and I think the intent behind the planner is really, really good. There's just some things that I think could have been done slightly different to still keep it as a unique planner layout that's different from other things that we have on the market, but still very, very functional and maximizing the space. But that's my review of the B5 Manager's notebook. Like I said, I am not in this planner for work anymore. I do have a separate video talking a little bit more about that in detail. But I'm not in this planner for work anymore. It worked okay for me for the first quarter. In the first month, it actually worked really well because I was very task heavy and not project heavy, and I didn't have as many meetings and things like that. It was just a very organized timeline of things that have to get done with year-end close. And so in January, it worked really well. It was when I got into the regular routine of work with meetings and notes and projects and things that this really just didn't function for me. So I have moved out of it and I am using something else, and I have a video on that, but I just wanted to give you guys my thoughts on the B5 Manager notebook and what I thought after using it for 3 months for 2025. But that's my video. If you have any questions or comments, please don't hesitate to put them down below and I will definitely get back with you. Give me a thumbs up if you liked this video. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss future videos, and don't forget to just scribble.